Hello everybody, it's Wyvern here with another bit of Total War Warhammer 2 Quick Match gameplay. This time around we are on Gorgazan, playing as the Force of Chaos against the Lizardmen. So going into this matchup, quite frankly I had no idea what I wanted to do, and I ended up paying for it. As you can see, I did bring the Mirror Guard here. I had 370 gold left over, with which I would have preferred to bring some Chosen, but unfortunately I didn't get around to it, so yeah. This is what I got stuck with. As you can see, we did bring some anti-large here in the form of good old Kolak, as well as Dragon Ogre Shaggoth. I did decide to bring Chaos Sorcerer of Death, my plan being for a bit of an armor sundering build. A bunch of Chosen, backed by with the Mirror Guard here, backed by the Weird Spawn, who of course do have armor sundering effect, as well as the Chaos Sorcerer of Death, who does have Soul Blight. So against Sarce Warriors, you can drop them to 0 armor. Even Temple Guard, you can drop down to 25. We also did bring Spirit Leech, as well as Scroll of Shielding, just to try to keep ourselves alive a little better. Finally, we do have these Marauder Horsemen with Throwing Axes, just to try to zone out sort of flyers or enemy harass. And as it turns out, my opponent went very, very heavy on the flying harass. So definitely we're in for a bit of pain. In retrospect, probably should have tried to bring two or three normal Marauder Horsemen with javelins, but oh well. Hindsight's 20/20, so that is what it is. Pushing in, you can see my opponent did bring 40 units of Terradon Riders as well as King Chief. I was surprised the Terradon Riders do have there's only 8 of them, so they don't tend to do that much damage, but they do have 13 AP damage per shot, so they can definitely dish out some hurt when you have this many of them. This is about what 2,400. This is about 2,400 gold worth of Terradons. Maybe about 3,000 worth of Terradons. For his front line, my opponent does have a bunch of Sarce Warriors backed by some Temple Guards, so pretty hefty anti-large core with 4 Temple Guard, then 3 Sarce Warriors anchoring things in the center. A Sarce Old Blood, interesting choice, but he is dirt cheap on foot, and he does have AP. He does have the Horn of Kygor, providing an AoE melee attack buff. Stand your ground, and well as the Amulet of Eatzel to give himself some fit damage resist. Finally, here in the back, my opponent does have a Skink Priest of Heavens with Harmonic Convergence, as well as Curse of the Midnight Wind, so good spells for the sort of dealing with chaos, and yeah, we'll definitely see how things break down. You can see that, we are going to be pushing in immediately. I obviously didn't have much of a choice. It was kind of I had to push. Now from the front, of course, the Chaos Warriors do have shields, so I don't have to worry too much about them taking damage from there, but my opponent can just harass me from the air, and quite frankly, there's not much I can do about it. I'm basically just forced to push, so really these first few minutes are basically just me harassing, skirmishing, throwing axes up at the Terradons, and failing miserably to do very much. Probably doing some friendly fire there with the axes, but you can see the Mirror Guard getting completely destroyed by the rear fire from those javelins. These guys have probably used up only about, I don't know, 20% of their ammo. 25% maybe. You can see they are dropping their rocks on the poor Mirror Guard, and they're just destroying them in general. So definitely some rough stuff. Had I had some javelins, that would probably have helped, but unfortunately we only have 1 unit of hatchets, so we're going to be doing some friendly fire and not really doing much to these Terradons. One does go down, but that's really not enough. Now we are pushing in with the Kolek as well as the mob of infantry. My opponent kind of not exactly focusing targets, and this is a bit of a mistake. Definitely could have probably focused 1 or 2 infantry units out here. For example, the Weird Spawn would have made an ideal target, even with their built-in, I think, 15% physical resist. These guys are very susceptible to ranged fire, so they would have made an ideal target. But as it is, my opponent did not focus on them. I do try to use a Spirit Leech here on the Terradons, figuring that with such a small model count, we should be able to kill 1 off at least. But it actually does not kill a single Terradon, which is kind of pitiful. I actually think it should have, but given how much damage it did to their relative HP, but it did not. That said, we do dive in with Kolek as well as his Shaggoth friend here, doing a bit of damage to these Temple Guards, to the Sarce Old Blood, and then pulling out, dropping a Lord of the Storm here, which I should have probably held off on until we got a better situation, but yeah, it is what it is. Now the Weird Spawn here overextending a little bit, so big misplay on my part. I should probably try to keep my formation a little more united. You can see over here the Chosen even taking quite a pounding from those annoying Terradons, just because there's so many of them. They're going to be able to get some value in there. But when you invest 3,000 Terradons and your opponent has nothing to counter you with, obviously you'll get some success. I do hit these guys with another Spirit Leech. This time around it is knocking some models off, which is good. That's finally a bit of success, and you can see the second time around it's definitely doing some damage. My opponent finally does shift fire to the Weird Spawn, probably a little late. Should have probably done that a while ago. But you can see the Chosen pretty badly mauled. Fortunately, 2 units of Chosen have made it to the front, and Chosen, of course, have monstrous melee stats. They're a much better unit than any of my opponent's units here. And of course, with this Soul Blight, we will be able to tank their armor down quite a bit. You can see these guys down to 25 with the Weird Spawn's armor sundering and all that sort of stuff. So pretty good. Things are going pretty well. Now we are going to try to snipe down the caster here. My opponent, though, will be counteracting with a Curse of the Midnight Wind. Just debuff my troops as much as possible, deny them that melee attack, and make it much harder for them to do damage. In the meantime, the Terradons are starting to run out of ammo, and once they're out of ammo, they're not really much of a threat. In retrospect, I perhaps should not have used up the ammo on the Marauder Horsemen against the Terradons, because quite frankly, we didn't really do that much damage. And the Terradons, while they definitely were a nuisance, you know, they can be dealt with once they come to ground. Anytime I hear Kolek is hit by a scroll of shielding, trying to keep him intact, you can see he's beating down the King Priest of Heavens pretty easily. Of course, the King Priest being a pretty terrible unit in combat. Getting pounded pretty hard, and he does get terror routed, but unfortunately he's going to be able to retreat through his own troops. There's just so many Saurus here. Definitely regretting a little bit not having brought Soul Blight, which would probably been incredibly useful here. But we do get a Lord of the Storm on this mob of Saurus infantry, as my opponent does not decide to maneuver out of the way. Bit of a mistake here though with the Marauder Horseman charging into the rear. What I should have done is had him hover on the edge, on the periphery of the fight, and I could have then sniped off this King Priest as he fled, which sort of big mistake there. And because of that, as they pull out, they're actually going to rout. And due to the fact that they rout, I'm not going to be able to harass this King Priest off the map, and that's going to come back to bite me in the rear later. In the pits, though, you can see there are some terror routes going down. And of course, the Terradons, when they do try to interfere, are just going to get pounded on by the Shaggoth. My opponent now trying to focus out Kolek, which is not the worst idea, but of course Kolek is very tanky. He does have some missile resist, he's got all that sort of stuff, so he's pretty hard to kill. And you can see these Temple Guard not holding up all that well with the Weird Spawn in there providing those debuffs. These Chosen are able to chew their way through these annoying lizards. Unfortunately here, the Marauder Horsemen, as they do rally, for some reason they do immediately rout off. I'm not entirely sure why that is, but they did rally. I sent them out the caster, and they promptly run away. So our opportunity to shut down the caster is lost, and you can see over here the Curse of the Midnight Wind just annihilating my defensive stats. Sorry, my offensive stats here in the pits. Harmonic Convergence does go down to Soros Old Blood, so he's going to be fighting much better. And you can see at this point, my opponent, although he has run out of ammo, things are definitely not looking great. The balance of power is right about dead center, and the King Chief still has a lot of rounds on him. I probably should have focused the King Chief out more so than the Terradons, because the Terradons are going to run out of ammo sooner, and the King Chief is going to be able to keep harassing Kolek here. And Kolek, while he is very tanky, does ultimately start succumbing to so much damage. Unfortunately for my opponent, though, the Chosen are in the pits here, and you can see they're already up to 62 kills. The unit that made it in there pretty healthily is going to be doing a lot of hurt. Here you can see the Terradons just routing off on 1 model, 2 models, nothing too fancy there. And I do pull back the Marauder Horseman, but unfortunately, once again, you can see my opponent does pull his Shaman back into the center here, where he's going to be pretty safe. And Kolek and the Shaggoth taking quite a beating. We do try to focus out the Sarge Old Blood, but my opponent just has a lot of buffs, a lot of things to keep him in the fight. And though we do charge in here, try to pin these guys in place, and the Lord of the Storm does go down. The Temple Guard, you know, they're still fighting. They're still in a decent spot, and they still have enough leadership to hold. That's one of those annoying things with Temple Guard. They just have so much leadership. Chosen, of course, will continue to pound away at these guys, but you can see another Curse of the Midnight Wind going down. A major problem for me is just these Curses of the Midnight Wind debuffing my troops. And so even when terror routes do go off, we're not really able to capitalize on it all that much, not able to rack up those kills that I really need to be racking up. Old Blood here, once again able to extricate himself, run away through the Temple Guard, so a bit of pain there. And Kolek actually routes off. You can see down to his last 400 HP, being harassed by that King Chief all the way, losing another couple hundred on his way out. So this King Chief's still a major nuisance. You can see some of my opponent's troops, you know, routing off. And here in the pits at this point, things have kind of deteriorated to where we're losing at this point. You can see I have the balance of power here decisively in my opponent's favor, or maybe not decisively, but definitely heavily in my opponent's favor. And I'm trying to pick off this King Priest over here with the Dragon Ogre Shaggoth. I'm simply starting to find myself in a bit of a pickle. Kolek here is overextended, and he's not going to be able to rally. I don't get stand your ground off fast enough, so he's actually going to rout when this King Priest comes in and shoots at him. We are going to be able to pick off this King Priest of Heavens, which is a nice little bit of a win. You can see the Shaggoth there whomping on him, hitting him over the head. The poor little skink there just laying on the ground. But although he does shatter, he does get finished off here, which is a nice little win. But Dragon Ogre at this point down to 700 HP. Finishing him off with an axe stroke there. But the Dragon Ogre Shaggoth very low on HP. So at this point, basically the entire fight is anchored on or centered on whether or not I can keep my Chosen in the fight. Because at this point, most of my army is gone. Most of my opponent's army is gone. So it's basically Chosen, the Shaggoth. Caster of Death here getting another Soul Blight off, though this time around no longer an Overcast, trying to melt down these last two Saurus troops before this King Chief comes back. This King Chief still does have, well, he only got 1 round, so at this point that's pretty relevant. But you can see my opponent here able to do some damage to Dragon Ogre Shaggoth. And here is where I felt that we were getting a bit of a win, because my opponent's army completely snaps at terror routes, and you can see we're able to get a Marauder Horseman on these troops. These Saurus warriors here are routing, and we're able to sort of pressure these guys away. And these Sarge warriors here actually are going to rout because they get, I think they routed. I was pretty sure they broke. Maybe they, there we go. You can see we were able to sort of wrap up my opponent's troops here pretty efficiently. Our balance of power is in my favor. Kolek has left the field, but you know, we've still got a lot of troops on the field. But unfortunately, some odd shenanigans going down. You can't see the here in the pits, Chosen ganged up on the Sarge Old Blood. They're able to sort of beat him down. They've got really solid melee stats, so over time they'll win out. Horn of Kygor are now. But unfortunately, we're gonna have a bit of a pickle here in a little bit. You can see the Dragon Ogre actually breaks, and I don't know why, because these units don't cause fear, they don't cause terror, and obviously neither of those should be relevant against Dragon Ogre Shaggoth. We were winning, and our balance of power is actually shifting more in my favor. And despite that, the Shaggoth routes. So I'm not entirely sure why that happened, and so that means that all these units are going to get to rally, and now my Marauder Horsemen shatter off the field, which suddenly leaves me in a very bit of a pickle. You can see the balance of power that was seconds ago around, it's probably the 70% mark, suddenly tanking, and I honestly don't know why. I don't know what caused all these guys to suddenly rout. I don't know why the Shaggoth suddenly decided to leave. The Stain Chief wasn't chasing him. There was nothing there, but you know, it is what it is. So we do get to counterattack here. This is basically the rest of the fight. The Chosen fighting courageously against the Sarge Old Blood, trying to beat him down. Of course, they can't chase him if he decides to disengage, but at this point I figured my opponent wouldn't really be able to disengage. He just pops stand your ground. The King Chief here, very low on HP, getting beaten down by the Chaos Sorcerer. If you look at the stats, the Chaos Sorcerer with 42, 45, 315, or 90 armor is actually better melee combatant than the King Chief by a good bit. So he's going to be able to beat him down, especially with the help of the Chosen now in the fight. My opponent is able to disentangle the Sarge Old Blood and still has a charge of Cold-Blooded, so definitely some rough stuff. And now all these troops are rallying, which is a big problem for me. These guys honestly should have completely routed off, but yeah, because the Shaggoth routed off, yeah, they're back. And so now it's the last few Chosen against this Horde of Temple Guard. Of course, this guy does have the Horn of Kygor. And he does have popped Cold-Blooded, so he's back up to 1200 HP, where he was at like 400 or 500 a second before. And now it's just the fight to the finish. You can see the Chosen here going fisticuffs to these guys. Some of my troops will rally on the periphery, but they won't really be able to come back because we don't have a Lord still on the field. And we are able to sort of dive in, but still, the situation is very dire. I'm trying to get the rear charge penalty with the Chaos Sorcerer of Death, trying to break these guys. But with the Horn of Kygor, they're doing surprisingly well against the Chosen. Just throwing things to the fast forward, you can see things going very back and forth. 3 units of Temple Guard slowly but surely getting some massacred here in the pits. We're actually forced to kill them, literally to the last lizard. You can see that last one there getting chopped down by the Chosen as they move in on the Sarge Old Blood, who's here on his 1300 HP. You know, the Chosen will do pretty well against him. He does have AP, so he's not weak against them. You can see the Terradon there diving in, actually doing quite a bit of damage. But the Chosen still have 1500 HP. They've got very high melee defense. At this point, they've gained 2 chevrons and are well on their way to another one. But my opponent's army, at this point, he's so reduced, and you can see with we do get a Spear Leech off, and this was huge. We do manage to melt the Sarge Old Blood off. His HP just tanking, and at this point, that will cause a shatter and a rout. So I came right down to the finish. Basically could have gone either way, right to the bitter end. Definitely showing the stopping power of Chosen. Definitely showing the importance of not screwing up in draft and bringing a Mirror Guard instead of a Chosen when you have the money for it. Something I should have probably done is brought more Marauders with throwing weapons. Perhaps stuck with the Chosen, but dumped the Weird Spawn and just settled for the fact that I wouldn't have that much armor sundering. An extra unit of Chosen would have probably made quite a bit of a difference. Or some extra Marauder Horsemen with Javelins just to zone out those Terradons. Chosen, very solid pick, I think, in this matchup, just very competitive stats. Well, the other thing I would have tried to get was the Purple Son of Zerus on the Chaos Sorcerer. It was something I debated before going in, but I then decided against it. But honestly, it would have been absolutely massive against those Sarge Warriors. My opponent blobbed up very much. It wasn't exactly the most competitive deployment there, and I could have gotten some massive value out of Purple Sun. Otherwise, perhaps a Lore of Fire would have been better, but that's already shifting stuff around quite a bit. Regardless, going into my opponent, definitely a little bit of a gimmicky build here with the Mass Terradons, but interesting to see how they work. Interesting to see that they are able to chip away and do quite a bit of damage, though I'm not sure they were cost-effective. I actually don't think they were cost-effective this game. Paid 2,400 and they whittled down a unit of Mirror Guard and some Chosen, but not even to full, so I don't really think they paid for themselves. King Chief, though, very valuable, obviously chipping away at Kolek throughout the game, so good stuff there. My inability to shut down the King Priest, of course, dragged that game out a lot more than it should have. The game would have probably ended up with a much more decisive win for Kimmy had I been able to finish off that Skink Beast. But impatience with the Horseman kind of ended up biting me in the rear there. Regardless, getting into my opponent, I do hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe below. If you have any comments, any criticism, any questions, anything like that, be sure to share them so that I can respond as soon as I can. As usual, guys, I do appreciate you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Wyvern out.